now more than ever, there's been a few games where Geno Smith just does not look like, he obviously looks like an NFL quarterback. He looks like he's a okay player at the position. But when you compare him even to somebody of Brock Purdy's status, who I don't think anybody really wants to admit that Brock Purdy is a really good quarterback. But even in admitting that, nobody, even I wouldn't say that Brock Purdy is a top 5 quarterback, top 10 maybe, but you take away all of Brock Purdy's weapons, we don't know how well he would perform really. We saw it for a couple of games this year. Obviously, he's been without McCaffrey for the entire season. Kittle has been out a game or two. Deebo Samuel's been out a game or two. And it looks like there's a chance that they lost Jordan Mason tonight for maybe an extended period of time with some sort of shoulder injury. But even with that, Brock Purdy has done nothing but be statistically one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And especially when you factor in the fact that, like I said, no McCaffrey the whole year. Kittle and Deebo have missed a couple of games. There's no excuse when you talk about Geno Smith, who has had all of his weapons for the entire season. Kenneth Walker has missed a game. But other than that, I don't think Zach Charbonnet is just a pushover at the running back position. Statistically, Geno Smith, yardage-wise, is in the tops of the NFL. But when you talk about just what he does at the position, he just gets outperformed. And not only outperformed, he just gets out, I guess, you look at who he's playing on the other side, except for those first few games where he was playing, a rookie quarterback making his first NFL start ever. And even in that game, I wouldn't necessarily say that Geno Smith played so much more outstanding than Bo Nix did. Geno Smith still in that game was not great. I would say the only game where Geno Smith played far and above the other quarterback he was playing was the New England game. And, if you're one good game, your one game where you outperform the other team's quarterback is against Jacoby Brissett, I just don't see how we can really consider you a good quarterback, much less a great quarterback. I guess the Geno Smith story is cool. I guess. I just don't know how much at this point the Seattle Seahawks want Geno Smith to be good more than they want their team to be good. Because it seems like just this story has been, it's the Seattle Geno Smiths. It's not the Seattle Seahawks. Every single week, I feel like there is some sort of comparison between Geno Smith, what he's doing now for his franchise, and how this is so much different than the Russell Wilson-led Seahawks. You know what Russell Wilson did? This team was one of the best teams in the NFL every single year when he was playing. But keeping this to just Geno Smith, regardless, he doesn't look like a good quarterback, especially tonight when he throws 2 pretty bad interceptions and a lot more passes that easily could have been intercepted, a lot more passes that easily could have been more on target to guys like DK or Jackson Smith and Jigba or Tyler Lockett. It just was an offense that didn't look good, and one of the reasons it didn't look good was Geno Smith. However, this team didn't just lose because Geno Smith played a poor game. This team all around played a poor game. Now, if you want to cancel out Laviska Shenault's kickoff return fumble that he had on the, I guess, to begin the Seattle Seahawks second drive of the game, if you want to say that he canceled that out by getting a touchdown, I'd say that's fair. Because the fumble that Laviska Shenault had only led to a field goal for San Francisco, and you compare that to his touchdown, obviously 6 is more than 3. So I'll get that statement. Defensively, Seattle played very, very poor. I mean, the first touchdown for Deebo Samuel, where Julian Love just absolutely whiffed on the tackle. The last play of the game, basically, where Isaac Warrendo runs all the way to the other end of the field, and then Kyle Juszczyk pounds it in from about 4 yards out. From the beginning to the end, this team defensively showed that they just aren't very good, like the offense. And this was the side of the ball that I think even myself included, a lot of people had more faith in this defense than they did in the offense. Not only with Mike McDonald coming over from Baltimore to be the head coach of this team, but with the personnel that they have. Of course, Tariq Woolen was out of this game, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse. The same way San Francisco has not used Christian McCaffrey being out as an excuse for this entire season. The Seahawks defense do not get a pass because Tariq Woolen has missed one game, because this has just not been a one-game issue. Since the Detroit game, Seattle has basically given up 30 points every single game. They only allowed 29 to the New York Giants, but that's to the New York Giants, where they have Daniel Jones at their quarterback, who, yes, I think is better than a lot of other people think, but it's still the New York Giants without Malik Neighbors, without Devin Singletary, and with an average offensive line that they gave up almost 30 points to. This just leads to the ultimate point, I guess. This team, they were major pretenders. And as great as they looked, as much of a world beater as they seemed, even after the Detroit game where they kept it competitive for most of the game, ever since that loss to Detroit, it seems like Seattle has just fallen off a cliff. Defensively, they're very below average. Offensively, they're average at best. I just don't see at this point, I guess I don't see the reason to think that this team should be pushing for a Super Bowl run. Like, every single Seattle fan wants to believe, and like every single player for the Seahawks wants to believe, this team could be a Super Bowl contender. But again, that's what every Seattle fan believes. That's what every Seattle player believes. That's probably what every single Seattle front office member, personnel, coaching staff member, and rightfully so. You should want that for your team. You should believe that your team can do that. Right now, it's time to take a look at the mirror and realize you're kidding yourself. If you think, first off, the Super Bowl, second off, even winning this division, and third off, possibly even making the playoffs. This team is in key positions, they're pretty void of talent. Wide receiver, they're probably the most talented wide receiver core in the NFL. But when you talk about the offensive line, and yes, with Abraham Lucas out, it does throw a different wrench in. But, I mean, they're tight ends. Their running backs are solid, but I don't know how much more talented at running back they are than half of the teams in the NFL. I just don't see where you point at for Seattle, especially when you talk about their quarterback. I don't see why there any reason to believe that they're a playoff team more than the other 16, 15 teams in the NFC. I think they're probably on the lower end of that spectrum.